5 Live Formula One.
Hello and welcome to Miami. Formula One is in Florida, the Sunshine State, this weekend for the 6th round of the World Championship, and it's a sprint weekend. So we've had one session already today, the only practice session of the weekend, and now it is time to turn our attention to the F1 sprint and the qualifying session that will set the grid for that sprint tomorrow. It's a tough task. The teams and drivers have only had 1 hour to have a little look at their cars, see how their upgrades are working, and now it all comes down to the next 44 minutes or so. It's Rosanna Tennant with you down here in the pit lane and paddock, and in the commentary box we have our lead commentator Harry Benjamin alongside former Formula One driver Jolyon Palmer and the BBC's F1 correspondent Andrew Benson. Guys, Max Verstappen topped the timesheets in practice. I'm guessing you're thinking he might top the timesheets in this sprint qualifying as well, Jolyon.
That's a pretty strong guess at the moment. It's pretty strong. And so was Max earlier on. Although it did take him nearly the whole hour to dial in a full lap. Then he did, and it was a pretty impressive lap at the end of the 1 hour practice. I think the threat's going to come from McLaren in this one with upgrades, particularly Lando Norris, who looked like he was getting closer towards the end of the session, didn't get a time on the board that was representative, and possibly Carlos Sainz. The other threat that we thought would be there would be Charles Leclerc, but he didn't run really at all in practice after an early spin.
Yeah, a very weird spin that was. He was sort of horizontal, wasn't he, across the racetrack, several cars having to pass him by. He wasn't able to reverse it and turn it around, and then he started to have problems with the clutch overheating, so he had to get out and make his way back to the paddock without his car. We are, as I said at the top of the show, in Miami. We're just sort of half an hour or so out of downtown Miami at the Hard Rock Stadium. Such an impressive building, of course, the home to the NFL team, Miami Dolphins, but home to us, Formula One, this weekend. And this circuit that loops its way around the stadium, Harry, presents some challenges to the drivers. They've only had 1 hour to get to grips with it. I know we've been here twice before, but it's a sprint weekend and stakes are high. So how are they going to approach this next session?
Yeah, well, I mean, as you say, it is a street circuit, and they are on the back foot with only one practice session, some more than others, as Jolyon alluded to. Leclerc massively on the back foot, but it's got to be full send for sprint qualifying. This is a competitive session. There are points up for grabs come sprint race time. The top 8 get points, and that can really prove rather useful come the end of the year, especially in that fight down towards the middle of the pack, if there is an upset and some of those bottom 5 teams can steal a point. So it is all up for grabs, but the walls are really close here. You've got that really long back straight, just over 1.2 kilometres long as well. DRS, let's see what happens.
We've got 6 sprint weekends this season. We've already had one last time out in China. This is the second one. Harry, give us a bit more information about how these sprint weekends work, because the format has changed this year and it was the drivers who pushed for it. But we've been scratching our heads, haven't we, this weekend, because the drivers are still complaining about it, but maybe that's just a driver's prerogative. What are we looking out for then in this qualifying session and then tomorrow with the sprint? How is it all working?
Yeah, so I mean, this is the 4th season for sprints. It's going to be 6 of them total. This is the second. Last time was China. Sprint qualifying is now, well, it's right now. It's now on a Friday, following the initial free practice session that we had. So that is Friday. Then the 100-kilometre sprint takes place Saturday ahead of Grand Prix qualifying. And then it's Sunday. Normal business resumes. Grand Prix remains the same, unaffected by any of the sprint results. And then ahead of us now in the sprint qualifying, slightly reduced times. SQ1 12 minutes, SQ2 is 10 minutes, and SQ3 is 8 minutes long. And that's essentially what it is. These changes have come about because they're still fine-tuning how the weekend will work. I think there's still a little bit of a way to go, especially when it comes to efficiency with time. Lewis Hamilton was quite vocal about this last time in China. There are some big gaps in between sessions. And I think maybe that's what the drivers are alluding to a little bit. It does seem like they've sort of backpedaled a little bit because they wanted these changes. But we're here now. We've got 6 in total. We've got to get on with it.
Certainly have, and getting on with it, the teams and drivers they're just getting into the cars now. The drivers, the fans are finding their seats around this stadium. Of course, the audience in the US growing over the last few years, and people here in Miami enjoying what is on offer over the next few days, I'm sure. And I've just seen Adrian Newey in the Red Bull garage. Of course, coming into this weekend, it was announced that he will leave Red Bull at the beginning of next year, the first quarter of 2025. Huge news, sending shockwaves through the F1 paddock. Where he will end up, who knows? Christian Horner giving a sort of hint as to perhaps it will be a hiatus for Adrian Newey. A lot of people thinking he'll be heading maybe to Ferrari and Maranello, but strange words coming from Christian Horner, the team principal of Red Bull, alluding to perhaps it will be a career break, but who knows? We'll put all the off-track chat to one side because the F1 sprint qualifying is underway. SQ1 has started, Harry. Let's get going.
Yeah. The clock starts ticking, and it is no surprise to anyone that Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari is first out, Jolien. He's got a lot of track time to make up for.
Yeah, he had the spin at turn 16 earlier on, just lost it at the apex of a very low-speed left-hand corner, and it cost him any meaningful running at all in practice. So he is the only car that goes out on the green. It's only a 12-minute session, though. You can hear there in the background the rumble of another car going down the end of the pit lane. There's a flurry of them now. Bottas and Zhou and Lance Stroll in the green. Aston Martin cruising to the end of the pit lane. So Leclerc's out first, but the rest are following.
Yeah, just over 5.4 kilometres this track, 19 corners, 7 to the right and 12 to the left. So that's just over 3.3 miles as well. It's tight, it's twisty, it gets very narrow in some places as well, but overtakes can happen. But crucially, this is sprint qualifying. It is about putting your fastest lap together and trying to set your grid place for the sprint race tomorrow. Let's just bring you up to speed with how the points are looking coming into this session in the drivers. It's Max Verstappen who leaves, 110 points to his name, 25 clear of his teammate Sergio Perez. Then it's Charles Leclerc in third in front of his teammate Sainz. Lando Norris rounds out the top 5. Over in the constructors, it's Red Bull who lead the way with 195 points. They are 44 clear of Ferrari. Then it's McLaren, Mercedes and Aston Martin, the top 5. And then RB lead that second pack in 6th in front of Haas, Williams, Sauber and Alpine yet to get off the mark, rounding out the 10 teams that take part in the Formula 1 World Championship. Charles Leclerc then across the line and embarks on his first flyer on that medium compound of tyre. Is Leclerc's mindset going to be, Jolien, I've just got to get a bank lap, or I've got to just try and understand this car a bit as well? They haven't got any upgrades this weekend, so there's nothing to really sort of test or new bits on him. Whoa, but already he had a similar incident this time last year in Grand Prix qualifying, sliding the rear, running out onto the curb and nearly losing the rear end of that Ferrari. Just about saved it.
Yes, you were talking about him getting banker laps in. He was all over the curbs in the first sector, abusing through turn 5. And then came in towards the triple left-hander, got right on the apex at 6 and then ran wide through 7, where he crashed out in last year's qualifying and in practice as well on a Friday afternoon, and abandoned that lap with another squirrely moment. I think Leclerc only knows one way of driving, and that is flat out. It either works or it doesn't, and so far this weekend it hasn't, but he's got 9 minutes, and everyone is on the medium tyre because you have to be in the first 2 parts of this qualifying. So that's the same for everyone. Leclerc has just got to build up some pace and get a lap on the board without spitting it into an oversteer moment.
Fernando Alonso making his way around. That's the sound you can hear of the Spaniard making his way through the S's in that first sector. Then the left-hander of turn 8 beckons a couple of notches on the steering wheel to get around. Bit of traffic in front of him as well as he embarks on his first lap. Manages to escape that nicely. Alonso and that Aston Martin proving quite handy when it comes to one-lap pace in qualifying, but Alonso perhaps making the better of others not being able to get the full expanse of their car. When you've got Fernando Alonso in the car, you know he'll probably get the absolute maximum out of it as well. Leclerc then across the line with his first proper time, but with that rear loss deep into his timing through, so it's not really competitive in the 150s, but he does get a lap crucially on the board as Fernando Alonso makes his way on to that long back straight. That was the scene of where Charles Leclerc had his spin in practice earlier on, which saw him out of the session and unable to take part. It's the 2 Saubers who set the first competitive lap time. So Zhou a 1:29.7 in front of Bottas as Stroll goes to the top.
Miles quicker than the two Alfa Romeos, the 2 Saubers. Stroll now at the top of the times. Here comes Fernando Alonso then sweeping through the final right-hander, absolutely flat out. He's slower than Lance Stroll on his medium tyres, quicker in the middle sector, slower in the other 2, and it is a really busy circuit out there. Every single driver is out on track trying to find a bit of clear space and getting a lap on the board.
Carlos Sainz was looking great in practice earlier on, goes fourth as he crosses the line, a 1:29.7. Five drivers across the line have set lap times as it currently stands. Norris, Perez and Verstappen all on good laps at the moment. Perez was fastest in the middle sector, immediately displaced by Verstappen. Piastri's looking really good in sector 1 as Perez goes top. Thanks, Matt. We've got 6.5 minutes left of this first part of sprint qualifying. This, the second of the sprint weekends in Formula One. Second out of 6 that are scheduled, and Miami playing host. Verstappen currently fastest, a 1:28.6. Then it's Piastri at a mega lap time in an upgraded McLaren, but it's Piastri only has half the upgrades compared to his teammate Lando Norris. Perez is third, Stroll fourth, Alonso fifth, Norris, Leclerc, Gasly just slots up into ninth, with Magnussen now displacing him in ninth. Ocon rounds out the top 10. But early stages, as the quick laps start to come in, this is the sound of Lewis Hamilton coming towards the line, fastest of anybody in the first sector. What's he got across the line? It's enough for fifth.
He lost a load of time in the middle sector, was in behind Lance Stroll through some of the fiddly bits, and maybe that cost Lewis Hamilton a little bit. That's the sound of George Russell and the other Mercedes accelerating out of the final corner, blasting past our commentary box and completing a lap in the other Mercedes. Fifth place for Russell.
And a reminder, the main focus will be on that elimination zone come the end of the next 5.5 minutes. The bottom 5 drivers, everybody from 16th down to 20th, will be eliminated, and that is where they will start the sprint race tomorrow morning. Less points up for grabs for the sprint. 8 points for the winner, all the way down to 1 point for 8th place. But points mean prizes. Logan Sargent is the only American in the field. We're not far from where he was born, Fort Lauderdale. Just crosses the line and gets 15th, a 1:29.5. On the bubble still, at risk down at the bottom. Joe, Sainz, Hulkenberg, Albon and Bottas currently find themselves needing to improve.
Oh, top of the wall for Fernando Alonso in the Aston Martin. Turn 16 is a tricky left-hander, and I think he just got up to the wall. Don't think there'll be any damage with that, but it hit the apex, shuffled him wide, and then actually quite a big sideways lateral whack for the Aston Martin. But again, I think he'll be okay without damage.
Sainz on another lap. He's down in 17th at the moment, but a really good first sector from the Spaniard. Here's Magnussen.
The Sauber massively in the way. 13, 14, 15.
That was Kevin Magnussen in the house on the radio complaining of traffic coming through that tight and twisty middle sector.
It was Joe, I think, in the Sauber, and that will be a penalty coming his way for the sprint tomorrow.
Leclerc also out there as well on a lap, coming through the first sector now. Personal best for the Monegasque. Joe out there too on a lap. He's down in 12th, but Sainz coming into the final sector now. Let's see what he's got. It's been personal best for Carlos Sainz in sector 1 and sector 2. Coming round the final corner now. It's taken flat. It's a slight right-hand kink, and the Spanish driver goes up to 4th, 1:28.6.
There are some underdogs at the moment in decent positions. Yuki Tsunoda was very good in practice earlier on. He's up in 5th position once again, having a very good day so far. And you've got the likes of Pierre Gasly and Zhou and Magnussen all at the moment heading through, which would be good results for them. Charles Leclerc, meanwhile, is down in 11th. The man that missed most of practice earlier on is coming down to the final corner. He's just tickling on the throttle now, trying to get to the line and improve his lap time. This should be a good chance for Leclerc to do so. Moving the car towards the right, minimising the distance across the line. He goes up to 3rd.
Nice lap from Charles Leclerc. Okay, 3 minutes left of SQ1. It's Verstappen who currently tops the time in front of Piastri, Leclerc, Perez, Sainz, the top 5. Great lap from Yuki Tsunoda in the RB 6th in front of Stroll, Russell, Hamilton, Alonso, the top 10. Then it's Norris, Gasly, Joe, Magnussen, Ocon the top 15, and then at risk of elimination and being kicked out of this session, Ricciardo, Bottas, Sargent, Hulkenberg and Alex Albon, 20th and last. So it's the 2 Williamses, 1 Haas, 1 Sauber and 1 RB. It's not the unusual suspects, but certainly pressure on the likes of Daniel Ricciardo in the RB. We thought he might have made a bit of a breakthrough last time out in China, got a new chassis with that RB and looked much more competitive in China in relation to his teammate Tsunoda. He'll be looking to try and make sure he gets through into SQ2 on an outlap at the moment, so we'll see what he's got. He'll get enough time for one more lap around.
Both Williams went out quite late into this shortened 12-minute Q1, and so Albon's one and only lap was pretty average, pretty bad. 20th position and a long way away from his teammates, so there must have been a mistake in there for him. He's in last, needs to improve.
Ooh, that is...
Wow.
If that wasn't contact.
That's not a penalty, then I don't know what is. Copy. We saw that.
So that was Piastri coming into turn one on the inside of the Sauber of Valtteri Bottas. It was almost as if Bottas didn't see him. Bottas turned in and there was contact. Bottas saw him at the last minute.
That's too late, man. I have no idea.
Jolien, your read on that?
Well, I mean, he can use the mirrors as well. He was dawdling on the racing line, was Valtteri. He's making a switch change on the steering wheel and not looking in his mirrors. Now, you've got to be told on the radio about traffic as well. That's what Bottas was talking about, but they literally nearly had contact. I don't know if they did or not. It was so close, and Valtteri's got to take a bit of blame when the car's getting that close, and it's papaya coloured. They stand out, those McLarens.
Well, that incident has been noted, and that's actually just been elevated between Bottas and Piastri. It will be investigated after the session, so the stewards room will be a little bit busy as Bottas finishes his lap and goes up into 14th spot. Ricciardo, though, on a crucial lap to get himself out of SQ1, was personal best from in sector 1, but he needs to find more time.
Do you want to know something interesting? Norris is top of the times, quarter of a second up on Verstappen. They've both just improved on a set of medium tyres at the same time on circuit. Norris has got a very heavily upgraded McLaren. The team are quite bullish about the prospects, and that is now Lando at the top of the times. It won't count for much. It means that he's definitely through with just 30 seconds to go, but that is encouraging for McLaren.
Well, if you read into their upgrades from last year, McLaren, when they brought them, they made a dramatic step forward. They've been downplaying it a little bit this weekend, but they'll be very much hoping to try and get that same effect this time around. Norris currently fastest, Verstappen, Magnussen third, in front of Sainz, Piastri at the top 5, Leclerc, Perez, Ocon, Tsunoda at the top 10. At risk at the moment, Joe is 15th, and in that elimination zone from 16th downwards, it's Bottas, Ricciardo, but gets himself out, puts the RB up into 9th spot. That puts Gasly at risk, along with Joe, Bottas, Sargent, Hülkenberg and Albon.
Both Mercedes are in the drop, heading towards the drop zone. Russell's 13th. Hamilton's come through and is only 10th.
And he won't get another go.
And he won't have another go. So Hamilton's not in the clear here, but can anyone further back make a final improvement? Russell up to 4th.
Fernando Alonso as well, right on the bubble, down in 15th spot. He's on the lap at the moment, just coming in to the final sector. Hulkenberg won't get another go. He can only manage 14th as he takes the checkered flag. Albon will not make it through. He stays 16th for the time being. This is the sound of Fernando Alonso coming into the braking zone, into the left-hander that takes you round the final corner. The pit lane entry just arcs to your right, and you carry straight forward and arc right across the line. What's Alonso got in the back? It's enough for second fastest.
He was already safe. No one in the bottom 5 is improving right now, but it was nonetheless an impressive lap for Fernando Alonso.
It was. Albon won't make it through. Gasly will not make it through. He's backed off and wasn't on a good lap anyway in the Alpine. The two Saubers, Joe ahead of Bottas, and heartbreak for the man from Miami, Florida, Logan Sargent, 20th and last in his Williams. Here he is.
I'm such a dumb.
And I don't need to tell you what that really was all about. That was Logan Sargent on the radio, clearly not happy, and that was a tough qualifying for Sargent, about half a tenth away in the end.
Albon has his lap time deleted.
Oh, and that puts him last. So Sargent 19th, Albon 20th and last. What a miserable day for Williams.
Yeah, it doesn't count for much for Sargent. He'll still think he's done whatever for whatever mistake he made on the final lap. But so is his teammate today, and Albon has gone over the track limits at turn 15. That's the chicane, the fiddly chicane on the right-hander. So he'll be frustrated with himself as well. We're going to get a replay of it now. This is the sound of the Williams coming through the left-hander. Oh, he's locked up at 14.
Oh, he cut the corner.
Yeah, so that was a proper track limits violation.
Well, I was about to say, Sargent had the fastest final sector. Well, now we know why. He cut the corner at 14.
That was Albon. That's Albon who did that. So
yes, you're absolutely right. So Sargent had the fastest final sector. So There must have been another mistake for Logan Sargent earlier in the lap for him to be so vocal on the radio. As we get one of the Ferraris as the replay, just touching the wall on the exit, coming onto that back straight.
That was Leclerc just nudging the right front right up against the wall. The final sector is basically one corner. It's turn 17. With the Williams, maybe had a good slipstream, and that allowed Sargent to be actually quick in the final sector, managed to get a braking done and sort himself out. But somewhere earlier in the lap, he must have made a mistake and cost himself the lap time that he's so frustrated with. But yeah, Albon just literally cut the chicane, and that is him at the back for a pretty predictable back five. Gasly, Zhou and Bottas, the two Saubers, both could be in trouble for impeding. Bottas certainly will get a penalty, and then Sargent and Albon.
Yep, Zhou and Bottas, both Saubers out in SQ1 despite reaching, well, the SQ3 section in China as well. So a tale of two for the Saubers. This coming in from the stewards. Incident involving Perez, Piastri, Sargent and Albon, Stroll and Alonso. And we've seen this time and time again, failing to follow race directors' instructions. Maximum delta time, that never usually comes to anything, but they'll be explaining themselves for that one.
I honestly don't even know if they will. We get that every single time you go through a Q1 and a Q2. They can't go unnecessarily slowly, but well, there's always a rational explanation for those ones, so I'm sure that'll be fine. But it's the impeding incidents that'll be a little bit tougher for certainly Bottas, and I wouldn't have been surprised if Zhou was in a little trouble as well for impeding Magnussen. It's pretty all to play for at the top end though. Norris, Piastri, Alonso was the top three, then Verstappen and Magnussen fifth. He's good at this circuit, always runs well here, had a great run out last year.
Qualified fourth for the Grand Prix.
Well, he could do it again. Fifth in SQ1. That's a blinding lap from K-Mag.
Out then in this first part of qualifying for the sprint race, Pierre Gasly in the Alpine, the two Saubers of Zhou Guanyu ahead of Valtteri Bottas, and the two Williams, Logan Sargent ahead of Alexander Albon. Not the unusual suspects, but certainly compounding a tough day for those at the back. Right, well, we now reset and go through into SQ2, which will be getting underway in just a few moments' time. We'll eliminate everybody from 11th to 15th spot, so it really is a battle to get inside that top 10. But in these early stages, Jolien, it really feels like the McLarens have found a little something here with these upgrades.
We have 1-2. Norris with the full upgrade package at the top of the times. Piastri with half the upgrade package, second place. Then Fernando Alonso, who did put in a good lap at the end and likes the sprint format. Well, even if he doesn't like the format, he goes well in the format. Had a great weekend in China last time out. Good racing, qualified in the top three in both qualifying sessions, the sprint and the Grand Prix qualifying as well. And it's finding again a little bit more one-lap pace. Verstappen, underwhelming, but still there in SQ1.
Well, he was a little bit underwhelming at the beginning of practice, really. He wasn't stringing together the lap time, and then when he did, suddenly it was top of the times. So Verstappen then well and truly up there. Quite a disparity, though, between the two Hasses. It's normally the other way around. Hulkenberg much better over a one lap than Kevin Magnussen is, but on that occasion, Magnussen absolutely nailing out of the bag. It is only SQ1, but that must buoy a driver with confidence in the early stages to make their way through.
Well, when you've done a fantastic lap, you've just got to chip away at it, keep finding little bits and not rewrite the book, really. You've got the cut set up in a decent window, make small changes and find a 100th here, 100th there, around 19 corners of this circuit. You're going to piece together more great laps, and Magnussen's got himself off to a fantastic baseline in this qualifying. Not a huge amount of time to make changes either with the short sessions. 10 minutes of SQ2, then 8 minutes of SQ3 coming up. Got to just keep making incremental gains.
Daniel Ricciardo into that session just less than a tenth back from his teammate Tsunoda. That seems encouraging for the Aussie.
He's not here to finish behind Tsunoda, though. That's the thing.
Well, this is how quickly we've had to change the level of expectation for somebody like Daniel Ricciardo, who's brought in, I suppose, essentially told to absolutely annihilate Yuki Tsunoda and be in the frame for that Red Bull seat. But Andrew Benson, that is very much the case at the moment. Not the case at the moment.
Well, so one of the questions that arose from China was, had Ricciardo improved, or had Yuki Tsunoda just had a really poor weekend? Because actually, if you looked at Ricciardo's qualifying performance, it was basically exactly the same position as he qualified in Japan 2 weeks before. I think he was 11th in Japan and he was 12th in China. Whereas Tsunoda, instead of being in the top 10 in Japan, was right down the back in China. And I know there were some people in the team who were asking the question, what's actually gone on here? There was certainly not a sort of leaping up and down, Daniel's made a massive breakthrough sort of thing. It was definitely a wait and see what happened. And he's very close to Tsunoda, but he didn't, as Jolyon said, he's not there to be right behind Tsunoda. He's there to beat him.
He had a new chassis in China, which was, maybe the catalyst for the turnaround that was questionable. But as Andrew says,
and that's the last thing you do, isn't it, as a driver, if you're going to make a change?
And Daniel said that. Daniel said that. He knows that there's pressure on him to perform. He was brought back in by the Red Bull management with a view to replacing Sergio Perez alongside Verstappen. He's not here to play second fiddle to Yuki Tsunoda, who was comfortably beaten by Pierre Gasly before. He was there to lead the team. He's an 8-time Grand Prix winner. He's a big character with loads of experience. He's not there to be 14th and within a tenth of Tsunoda as a decent reprieve. He needs to be making SQ3 here and starting to nudge towards regular points.
Well, SQ2 underway then, 8 minutes and 8 seconds, counting already on the clock as the cars head out onto this 5.4 kilometre circuit, the Miami International Autodrome, round 6 on the Formula One calendar, and hosting the second of 6 sprint races that we will have this season. Right now, this is sprint qualifying, setting the grid for the sprint race, which will take place tomorrow ahead of qualifying for the Grand Prix. And then Sunday is, as normal, Grand Prix qualifying. The difference is with the sprint, shorter race, and also only the top 8 get points as well. 8 points for the winner, all the way down to 1 point for 8th place. So really it always rules out those bottom 5 teams a little bit unless something spectacular happens to the front runners during the race. But at a circuit like this, Jolyon, where the walls come thick and fast, we've already seen Leclerc have a little bit of a moment early doors straight out the pit lane. You can suddenly find yourself in the wall and suddenly you're at the back of the pack starting from P20.
Well, yeah, there's a little bit of jeopardy in the circuit. We've seen it with other people hitting the wall as well. Last year Max Verstappen had to start 9th after Leclerc hit the wall and he couldn't improve on his lap time. So it's not only your own mistakes, but you've got to find a clear bit of track and no blue flags and no yellow or red flags as well. So there's still things that can go wrong even for the fastest cars. And I think for the sprint, the likes of Williams now, they're into a test session for the sprint tomorrow morning. It's going to be very difficult for them, even in a normal race, for them to get a top 8. But from the back, it's pretty much a no-hoper. But they can change the car at least before tomorrow's qualifying.
Okay, first fast lap starting to come in. Ricciardo setting the first sector alight as well. Perez, though, coming well in the middle sector. This is the sound of the Red Bull driver. He'll be first to cross the line, and he does indeed go fastest with that lap time, a 1:27.8 on the boards. Hulkenberg second, but Stroll just pips him and goes second in that Aston Martin. So Stroll actually finding a little bit of improved pace so far this weekend. They've got some upgrades on that Aston Martin as well after the last upgrade brought in Japan. Not going the way of Lance Stroll. Seems to be finding a little bit more pace in that Aston Martin this time around. Perez fastest. Ricciardo was very good in that first sector. Currently second, 1:28.1. Again, everybody on that medium Profana tyre.
Piastri and then Norris take the fastest first sector as well, which takes you through the sweeping turns at the start of the lap. Perez quickest is 1/10 quicker than what Norris did at the start of SQ1, so the benchmark is getting lowered, the track's rubbering in. This is Charles Leclerc accelerating his way through the final right-hander at turn 19 and getting up to second position.
There he goes, making his way through. 5 minutes remain of this session. Hamilton across the line then, 7th fastest for the Mercedes. We'll see what his teammate George Russell has got. He'll be behind Carlos Sainz, who goes over the line, 5th fastest for Sainz, so not quite on par with his teammate who missed the entirety of the one and only free practice in this qualifying session. Sainz 5th, Russell across the line, pips Hamilton to 9th. Hamilton now 10th. Piastri, great lap time up to 4th, but his teammate fastest in the first sector, fastest in the middle sector. Lando Norris is coming alive in that McLaren, and he goes fastest of anybody, a 1:27.597 for the Brit.
Verstappen waits in the pits, as does Tsunoda, so 13 drivers of the 15 have got a time on the board. Norris is a threat here. I do think he had a slightly troubled practice earlier on, struggled with a power steering issue, which eventually looked like it was sorted towards the end of the session. But with that upgraded McLaren, so many new parts on it, new floor, new suspension, new front wing, it's all changed there. And it is looking quick. Quarter of a second up on Perez, who was pole here last year, let's not forget. 4 tenths up on Leclerc, who's been quick here in the past as well. Verstappen now leaves the pits and we'll get a comparison. But Norris looks up for the fight.
He certainly does, as we now get into that little period where there's just a little bit of a lull. Ricciardo on the radio.
Yeah, I hit the wall as well, 10-16, but seems okay.
Seems to be a little bit of a common occurrence for a few drivers, but they're heading it square on, so not too much damage.
Someone eventually is going to hit that just a little bit more force and they're going to ding a suspension there, but for now it's okay for Ricciardo. It's a very low speed left-hander, and then you're fighting to get on the throttle as soon as possible because it's pretty much a kilometre straight after that up towards the final big braking zone, the final corner at turn 17, and everyone's just trying to fight for that throttle, take the gain all the way down the straight, and then doing so with 1,000 horsepower underneath their right foot. They're lighting up the rear tyres, just flicking the back out and hitting the wall.
Hamilton then comes into the pits, but he needs to find more time in these last 3 minutes. Currently down at 11th and at risk of elimination, along with Ocon, Magnussen, Verstappen and Tsunoda, who now go out, having waited initially. They will now head out onto the track, currently on their outlaps, just coming into the final sector. So the Red Bull and the RB with times to set. It's Norris fastest at the moment, Perez second, Leclerc, Ricciardo, Piastri the top 5, Alonso, Sainz, Stroll, Hülkenberg, Russell the top 10.
Pressure on Russell and Hamilton, 10th and 11th. Hamilton went through in SQ1, he was 12th. So they didn't have a huge amount of margin to the tail end of the field, and Mercedes still not looking like they've got a tremendous amount of pace in this part of qualifying either. Getting both cars through into SQ3 has got to be the target for them right now in 10th and 11th. There's also pressure on Verstappen, who, when he puts in a time, presumably, when he does, he's going to jump into the top 10, and that will put Russell down as well. So both Mercedes have to improve, but Verstappen, with 2 minutes left on the clock, now starts a lap, and he can't really afford to get this wrong. He's gone late, the track's in his best condition, they've put a bit of faith in Max. He can probably just about abort one and go again if he has to, but this is now him on his final lap of SQ2, and he wants to hook it up.
Leaving it late for Max Verstappen, who feeds his way through the S's of 5, 6 and 7. Then it's the long sweeping left-hander of turn 8, which takes you back on yourself around this Miami International Autodrome. He's over a tenth and a half off Lando Norris in the first sector. So Norris at the moment, and that McLaren is faster than the Red Bull of Max Verstappen, who hasn't had the smoothest of starts this weekend, fastest in practice, but it took him a while to get there into the braking zone of 12, out through 13. The long right-hander again as the sun shines down on that Red Bull, heads up over the crest of 14, the quick chicane, the left-right 14, 15 as you then get ready and gear yourself up for that long over 1 kilometre back straight.
Not a great lap from Verstappen. He's only half a second down on Norris through 2 sectors. Should still have enough to get into the top 10, but certainly not the cleanest. It looks okay through 2 sectors, but he's not lighting up the timing screens. Tsunoda gets the time on the board and is only 14th, so he's going to be out in at the back of this. He won't go again. Here comes Verstappen now, past our commentary box and flashes across the line, up to 4th.
Well, it's not what we expected to see from Max Verstappen, who just doesn't seem to be that comfortable at the moment. 4th fastest, Norris fastest at the moment. Perez, Leclerc, Verstappen, Ricciardo, the top 5. Piastri, Alonso, Sainz, Stroll, Hülkenberg at risk. But in that elimination zone, the 2 Mercedes of Russell and Hamilton, Kevin Magnussen and Tsunoda, everybody out on track at the moment, trying to find time. Russell's having an okay first sector. Fernando Alonso coming through in the middle sector now.
Hamilton's not had a good first sector. He's now shuffled down to 12th. Russell is 11th. Russell's finding a little bit of time. Hamilton is not. In fact, he's made a mistake in the first sector. It's even worse than that. He's going to do well to salvage this, Hamilton.
Ocon can't get through into the final part of sprint qualifying. 13th as he takes the checkered flag. Carlos Sainz had a rough middle sector as well. He's down in 8th, so even he's not nailed on for this either. The Ferrari driver, the only one who got the full practice session in, down in 8th at the moment. Alonso off in the middle sector.
Magnussen's going to go out as well after the heroics of SQ1. Magnussen is going to be 14th. Tsunoda's going to be 15th. Can the Mercedes get themselves through? Hamilton's up against it.
I hit the wall.
Hamilton saying he hit the wall. Sainz crosses the line. He doesn't find time. Stays in 8th. Hulkenberg's on the bubble. Russell and Hamilton cross the line, but they're not going to be able to do it either. Out goes Lewis Hamilton in 12th. Russell to the line as well. What can he do when he comes around the final corner? He's not going to make it through either. It's 11th and 12th for the two Mercedes. Russell ahead of Hamilton, ahead of Ocon in 13th. Magnussen doesn't do it, and Tsunoda bails out at the end of his lap as well. The Japanese RB driver rounds out the top 15. So, out go the two Mercedes, the Alpine of Ocon, the Haas of Magnussen, and the RB of Tsunoda.
Mercedes, 11th and 12th. Russell 13 thousandths away from the top 10. But that is Nico Hulkenberg in that Haas now.
Once again.
Hulkenberg is 10th. Mercedes have both cars now out in SQ2. Here's Lewis Hamilton.
I got nothing, man. Yeah, copy Lewis, yeah, so yeah, we've been bumped.
The times are so close. Russell and Hamilton and Ocon as well in 13th. All were within half a tenth of getting through into the top 10. Where there is a Haas, where there is the RB of Daniel Ricciardo, just after we were saying that the progress isn't necessarily real, he's up in 5th place and put in a brilliant lap. And I think Hamilton was just we heard him say he hit the wall. It was just a glance akin to that of Fernando Alonso earlier on, and Charles Leclerc as well, just coming out of turn 16, little nudge, but nothing that was catastrophic. He lost so much time in the first sector. That's where the lap time went for Lewis.
Neither Mercedes will reach the final part of this sprint qualifier. That hasn't happened since Austria last year, and it continues to compound the rough time that Mercedes are having at the moment. Bringing upgrades this weekend as well, but still finding it difficult to extract the time that they think is within this car. They can't find it out on track at the moment.
They're nearly a second away from Norris. That's the same power unit in the McLaren and the Mercedes. There is nearly a second of performance between Norris and the McLaren. Top the times, looking really good in the upgraded McLaren. And Russell, 8 tenths down as the lead Mercedes. It's a bit of a humbling one. They can, again, they changed the rules this year, the FAA, so they can open Parc Fermé, which means they can change the car before qualifying tomorrow. They're going to need to learn about what's going on with the car, some new parts on that Mercedes, and something's not working.
And it's not going to continue the good form for Kevin Magnussen from that SQ1 session where he had the upper hand over his teammate Nico Hulkenberg. Roles reversed as usual in that occasion. Hulkenberg with a stellar lap to get himself up into the top 10. And interestingly, roles reversed at RB. Tsunoda didn't make it through, but Ricciardo did. Ended up having the 5th fastest time. But Tsunoda had an issue coming into turn 14.
Yeah, it was rally crossing through the low-speed chicane. The left-hander up the hill into the right was just four-wheel drifting through there, which cost him a bit of time, but he was a mile away from making it through. Needed another half a second to do that, so I think that he was already struggling when he came through into the end of the middle sector. But Ricciardo can be happy, up in 5th, and he's under a bit of pressure, Daniel Ricciardo, still with RB, but this is exactly what he needs to do.
So just getting ready then for the final part of sprint qualifying. You know how we said, I think all of us said this was Max Verstappen's sprint pole in the bag. Bit of backtracking on that now?
It's 2024, Harry. The smart money's always on Verstappen. I don't care what's happened before it, he'll probably still do it. But Norris is impressive. If anyone can stop him, it's Lando right now. They're going to be moving on to the soft tyres, so that will change the game slightly. The tyres will behave differently, softer compound, bit more grip, as Lewis Hamilton shakes his head and trudges out of the Mercedes garage. What a tricky start to the season it's been for Lewis. Wave to the crowd, always gets a good reception here in the States, but they wanted to see a little bit more from him than this.
Packed grandstands as well as we came into the circuit this morning. Queues flooding out the gates to get a seat in time for practice. And that is a dejected Lewis Hamilton. I mean, statistically, this is his worst start in his Formula One career. it's still a while yet before he gets to join the Scuderia Ferrari. But right now, he's got to just hold his cards in a Mercedes and hope they can find some sort of turnaround. But the problem is they've also brought upgrades here, which clearly aren't delivering.
Must be tricky for him just mentally now. He knows he's leaving the team. The team are just slumping further and further away. He did well to get a podium in the sprint in China. A bit of a Hamilton session of old in the wet, getting himself on the front row, leading half the race, but still ended up being a distant second to Verstappen once Max got up to speed. The rest of it was a long season, 24 races, and with the way that it started, Max just want to save a bit of face, find a rhythm before turning up to Ferrari, but then just put on the red overalls, because Ferrari are releasing a much better window and they look like they're going places. Mercedes still scratching their heads.
Russell as well, looking slightly dejected as he gets out of his cockpit, walks down the pit lane, helmet stays firmly on. Russell just ahead of Hamilton in the end, the two Mercedes 11th and 12th. Russell actually will start 11th once again for a sprint, did that in China as well a couple of weeks ago. Through though into SQ3 then, and the battle for pole position for the sprint race, well, it's the two McLarens of Norris and Piastri, the two Red Bulls of Verstappen and Perez, the two Ferraris of Leclerc and Sainz, and the two Aston Martins of Alonso and Stroll, with the outliers, Nico Hülkenberg in the Haas and Daniel Ricciardo in the RB. Now, it's not too often we see Lance Stroll up there at the moment. He's had a rough start to the year.
He has. It's the sprint. It's not the mainstay of the weekend. The Grand Prix qualifying is tomorrow. You get points for the top 8 in the sprint. He's done well to be in the top 10. He's a bit closer to Fernando Alonso, at least in SQ2 there, just a tenth and a half down on Fernando. He could be there at the end of this. He'll probably have a decent shot at some points, but he's still got a job to do. And Magnussen really shows that. What a great lap in SQ1 from K-Mag. And then he's actually 3/10 slower in SQ2 on the same tyres with the track grip coming up. Just couldn't replicate the lap. And if you can't do that, then you can look like a hero 1 minute, and then suddenly Magnussen's 14th. Probably not going to score anything in the sprint tomorrow.
Well, green light then once again on at the end of the pit lane, and the finals part of sprint qualifying is underway. Nobody though in a mad rush to head out onto the track. Everybody staying firmly in the pits with 6 minutes and 55 seconds already counting down.
Well, they've got soft tyres to go on, and they're going to be good for one lap, so they don't want to rush out because there is a bit of track evolution. It's a temporary circuit. This Miami International Autodrome is not used for the other 51 weeks of the year around the Hard Rock Stadium. It's a pleasant setting outside of downtown Miami, but it's not used very much for racing cars, so there's not a lot of rubber down, and that's why going late in the sessions should give you a little bit more grip once other cars have gone. But everyone's had the same idea, so it is literally foot tapping time. A little bit of a waiting game for everyone.
Fans on the drivers in the cockpits because it is hot as well. Air temperature 28.4 degrees, track temperature almost at 45 degrees, 61% humidity as well. The sun is shining, the skies are blue, there's a few white puffy clouds overlooking this 5.4 kilometre circuit. 19 corners, 7 to the right and 12 to the left. It's fast, it's furious, but the walls come at you quicker than you might imagine, and it really gets quite narrow at some points. I don't think it really, if you see it on the screens through the footage, doesn't quite do it justice with just how narrow, especially that long back straight, can get.
Well, Leclerc showed it earlier on. He couldn't turn the car around and ended up perpendicular on the racetrack. Pretty much blocked the whole track for everyone else. So it is narrow at points. Other points are much wider. There's long straights. There's overtaking potential.
Yeah, it is quite a physical track as well, but nobody keen to go out at the moment. 5 minutes on the clock. The grandstands are absolutely packed, but as you say, everyone's going to go on the soft compound tyre for this session, so good for one lap. Don't want to risk it, but also if they all go out at the same time, traffic management's going to become an issue, surely.
Well, there's only 10 cars, so they should be able to just space themselves out, and if they're all on a fast lap at the same time, then they won't have to worry about slow-moving vehicles in the way as well, which you can sometimes get in the earlier parts of qualifying. We saw with Bottas, and he's under investigation still further down. It's a little bit cooler this year. Still feels sort of baking hot, but it's kind of a nice baking in the sun. The drivers, this was one of the more physical races. It's cool vests aplenty. It still will be. It's 28.5 degrees with a fair chunk of humidity, but for the last couple of years here, it's been another 5 or 6 degrees on top of that. I remember being here in 2022. It was oppressively hot. It was an absolute sweater in 22 for the first race here, and so that'll mean that the drivers have a slightly more comfortable time in the Grand Prix on Sunday. Hour and a half of racing around effectively a street circuit. Not a huge amount of ventilation, but a little bit cooler. It'll also mean the tyres will stay in a little bit more, and that's the soft tyres, crucially, that they're going on to now. Should be able to last comfortably the full lap.
There we go, as the engines get started, and it's the Red Bulls get released from their garage, and shortly Piastri in the McLaren following them out as well, with just over 3.5 minutes on the board, and they all come filing out into the fast lane.
I want to see one-shot quali for this. For the end of SQ3, they've all waited for 5 minutes.
Oh, yeah, what a waste of time.
We could have had, one by one, see them all come through. Instead, they're going to go out. Literally, they're going out in unison now with Perez at the front of the queue. In fact, Hulkenberg's already gone in the Haas ahead of Sergio Perez. I'd love to see this format just tweaked so we get one-shot quali. I know, but we only see one shot of it because they're all together. Whereas if they go one by one, you get 8 minutes worth of action, and we get to see each car go round. Instead, we've got 8 minutes worth of action, seeing no cars for 6 minutes, and then they all come through in a rush at the end.
How would you decide the order of who goes out for one shot?
Maybe you do the reverse of SQ2.
Yeah.
You just do that. It makes a little bit more meaning in SQ2, and then you can still have a bit of variation. It's a different tyre compound. It makes complete sense.
I can get on board with that. Just over 2.5 minutes left then, and it is going to be a one-shot qualifying with everybody piling out onto the circuit, just waiting for Piastri to emerge from the pits. He's the only driver not out there at the moment, and everybody out there as is mandated on the soft compound of tyre, trying to get heat into the tyres, is Max Verstappen, making his way slowly round the middle sector through turns 14 and 15. It's quite a steep incline up through 14 as you peek over the crest into the right-hander of 15 before you stamp on the brakes straight away into 16, round the left-hander, and that takes you down that 1.28 kilometre back straight. 2 minutes to go then, and Verstappen weaving down that back straight to get heat into his tyres, and he's got a nice bit of clear track in front of him and behind. And who is actually behind him? It's Ricciardo, who's the next car behind him.
They've spaced out quite nicely. So Hulkenberg's already into his flying lap, sweeping into the left-hander at turn 6 in the Haas. Perez now starts a lap ahead of Verstappen, and now the Dutchman launches coming out of the final corner. And let's see what he can do, because he hasn't been so hooked up through SQ2 and SQ1 as well. The McLarens look like they're a real threat. His teammate's been right there as well. He's not had the cleanest of days so far as he comes around avoiding the curbs at turns 2 and 3. This is it.
Max Verstappen then with just over a minute left on the clock, making his way through sector 1, through turn 5, the S's of 6 and 7 beckon round the long sweeping left-hander. Leclerc almost lost the rear end of the Ferrari in SQ1 there, lived to fight another day. Verstappen fastest of anybody in the first sector. Perez going well in the middle sector, a little bit further up than Verstappen.
That is a good first sector from Verstappen. The best we've seen so far today is he's got the DRS open now, charging his way 205 miles per hour, bouncing a little bit on the long first straight. Smashes the brake pedal and gets towards an apex at turn 11, feathering out of the throttle through the long right-hander of 12. He's going to fumble his way through this horrible low-speed chicane, bounces over the curb, big snap of oversteer from Max through 15. That might cost him a little bit of time.
Hulkenberg crosses the line, first lap time on the board, a 1:28.4 for the German in the Haas, immediately displaced by Sergio Perez, who takes fastest spot with a 1:27.8. Verstappen fastest in the middle sector.
Norris has made a big mistake in the first sector. The man that might have been a threat for pole is 8 tenths away. He's not going to do it.
Norris then will not find the time. He's going to have an incredibly mighty rest of this lap. Verstappen then with one more corner to go as the sparks fly from underneath that Red Bull. Fastest as he takes the checkered flag. Provisional pole for Max Verstappen for the sprint, a 1:27.641. Couple of tenths clear from his teammate Perez. Ricciardo in the RB puts himself up into third. What's Lando Norris got in this final sector?
Piastri's miles away as well. Half a second down in the first sector. It's Leclerc who might be close. Fastest middle sector for Charles Leclerc.
What a mighty middle sector from Charles Leclerc, the man who missed pretty much the entirety of the only free practice session we had before diving in to this sprint qualifying session. Stroll goes fourth ahead of his teammate Fernando Alonso. Lando Norris could only manage sixth. It's not going to be the dream pole for the sprint for Lando Norris and an upgraded McLaren. What can Piastri do as he comes across the line? Leclerc will go first, and he just misses out on taking that top spot. Leclerc in second. His teammate Carlos Sainz could only manage a top 5 start. Piastri coming into the final sector now. This is the sound of the Aussie in his second season with McLaren. Round the final corner and across the line, he pips his teammate into 6th. He goes in front of Stroll, Alonso, and did Norris only manage in the end 9th fastest, only in front of Nico Hulkenberg. It was looking like the fairy tale for Lando Norris in this sprint qualifying session. That is not to be. Instead, it's Max Verstappen who will start the sprint race from pole position.
What did I say?
Yeah,
no matter what it looks
right.
like, Max will be there, and he is. Norris lost 8 tenths in the first sector. In the end, he was 8 tenths down after 3 sectors as well. He's close. He has the fastest final sector. I think he's got the fastest middle sector as well as Lando Norris, but he lost a heap in the first sector. He's obviously made a big mistake somewhere through the faster corners at the start of the lap, and that was a chance, and it's a chance that gone begging for the man that was sprint pole last time out. But it's only the sprint. There's a qualifying tomorrow.
Okay, I think that's it. That's P1 Max.
Lol. What happened to the others? This was terrible.
Slightly worse changes than you, maybe.
I mean, I'll take it, but yeah.
He'll take it.
Just as you think it's a little bit close, and Verstappen is bemused at how he's managed to take pole with what was an awful lap. Daniel Ricciardo, 4th quickest.
I mean, that's how you bounce
New
back.
chassis. Hello.
Daniel Ricciardo, a sensational lap in the RB. In the end, it's Verstappen who will start the sprint race from pole. Alongside him will be the Ferrari of Charles Leclerc. A great comeback from Leclerc, having missed practice. Sergio Perez third, Daniel Ricciardo fourth, Carlos Sainz rounds out the top 5, Piastri 6th, Stroll 7th in front of Fernando Alonso. Then it's Lando Norris down in 9th, Nico Hulkenberg rounds out the top 10 in the Haas as the top 3 peel in to Parc Fermé. Out of the cars, Perez straight away taking his helmet off. A few words with his teammate Max Verstappen, who now removes the hand device and takes his helmet off, and you can hear the cheers from the grandstands. There's a lot of Perez supporters here in the stands supporting the Mexican driver, but the Red Bulls then split in this sprint qualifying session by the blue Ferrari of Charles Leclerc.
Great job from Leclerc. 4 tenths up on Sainz, who made a mistake in the final sector. They were neck and neck into the final sector, but I think Sainz must have missed his braking point and lost a heap of time. Could have had 2 Ferraris in the top 3, but Leclerc's recovered nicely after that spin earlier on.
So this is the sound of Lando Norris then, and was that where he made the mistake in the first sector with the rear just getting a little bit loose?
No, that's the middle sector there at turn 11, so it was...
Oh.
That was actually not the end of the world for Norris there in the middle sector. It was a slide through the exit at turn 11. Didn't cost him a lot of time. It's the first sector in the highest speed where Norris has made his mistake. That screech was a lock-up from Carlos Sainz, painfully running wide at the final corner and losing a good few tenths in that. Max Verstappen had the big oversteer over the curb. That's probably part of the reason he's bemused at no one managing to beat him. Quite close to going all 4 wheels over the track limits at turn 14, the left-hand part of the chicane, and then clambered over the curb and unsettled the Red Bull.
In the end, just over a tenth between Verstappen and Charles Leclerc, who make their way into that top 3, and we can shortly hear what they have to say, or what Max Verstappen will have to say. He'll have the best view in the house.
Congratulations, your first sprint quali pole position of the season. How was it out there? Talk us through it.
To be honest with you, it felt really terrible, but yeah, I don't know, maybe that last session was just incredibly difficult to get the tyres to work, because already in SQ2 I didn't feel great. SQ3, I think, yeah, it just felt quite similar for me. I didn't really improve a lot on the soft, but somehow we were first, and of course I happily take it, but didn't really feel enjoyable out there to drive for whatever reason. Because in practice, it felt really, really nice. I was very comfortable and confident. Qualifying, not so much.
It seemed like Lando was about to get the pole position until the end there. The whole grid seems to be closer together. Does that come down to the lack of practice time here, or how do you think it's going to play out tomorrow?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I don't know. I mean, it might be the track layout a little bit. I thought after practice, I was quite confident that we could really fight for pole. Then in qualifying, it didn't really look like that for me. But somehow we still ended up in first. I don't know what happened to the other cars in the last lap.
Okay, well done, and good luck for tomorrow morning.
Thank you.
Max Verstappen, the sprint race pole sitter here in Miami, speaking to Naomi Schiff. So he will start the sprint race from pole position. Alongside him, Charles Leclerc. Jolien, we were all eyes were on Lando Norris to see how well he would do, but this bodes well for the race. He could claw through the field.
Well, yeah, I'd hope so for him. From 9th position, his SQ2 time would have beaten Verstappen, by the way. Norris was the fastest man in that qualifying. He just didn't get the lap in at the end. So tomorrow's qualifying, it's game on again, if not for the sprint for Norris.
Well, do join us for the sprint race. 5 to 5 in the afternoon will be on air ahead of Lights Out from 5 o'clock in the afternoon in the UK. My thanks to Jolien Palmer, to Andrew Benson, Max Verstappen then on pole, and a big thank you as well to the entire team, including Rosanna Tennant and producer Paddy. That is it from Miami. This has been an IMG production for BBC Radio 5 Live.